Welcome back to the Intelligent Builder podcast, sponsored by Plutus Agents. We help residential contractors and home builders eliminate the manual chaos in scheduling, client communication, and estimating so they can stop wasting time on admin, increase margins, and keep building with the same team. So if that sounds useful, connect with me on LinkedIn and DM me the word growth for a free growth consultation. Today, I'm joined by Dunn Jr., president and partner at Exeter Building Company, a fast-growing custom home builder in Raleigh, North Carolina area with a reputation for impressive execution. His journey began in accounting, transitioned to consulting, got into finance, and now he's back into business operations at Exeter, where he now runs the company end to end after buying in as a partner 2 years ago. Stephen, it's great to have you on.
Well, pleasure to be here. Great introduction. I'll try to live up to it.
Awesome. So could you just kind of share that turning point when, because you kind of started in financing and then you transitioned to operations, now running the company. So what kind of made you decide to take the reins on that?
Yeah. So, I think it really goes back to when I started working. Both my parents were hardworking, father's an attorney. My mom was actually a flight attendant. But what they always taught me was you treat everything like you're an owner. You don't, even though you're in a job, you're an employee, the goal is kind of, how can you help benefit that company, benefit that individual, that boss you're working for? Because when, you're early on, you're probably not working with a partner, or somebody high up, but you're still working for somebody to do some activity. And I think that's really what I did from day one. And that's what's allowed me to be really successful, I think, as an employee throughout my career. And that's the advice I give to a lot of people who either don't want business ownership because it's not for everybody. But I say, if you're going to go the employee route, give it your all every single day. That's not me saying work 80-hour, 90-hour, 100-hour weeks. It's just saying treat it like it's your own in every action and every decision you make. And that's really what I did when I came to Exeter. I started in finance over here because that was kind of my background between doing consulting previously, finance, startup, ultra high net worth clients. And so just really was to learn the industry, learn about real estate, learn about business, more from that scope of a smaller business. And I was very fortunate to have a great ownership group over here that, kind of rewarded me and recognized me for that's what I wanted to do. I kind of was very open when I started that I was very interested in my own business at some point, ownership. So they kind of allowed me to come in, take ownership of the activities I had. And then slowly I was just trying to take more and more off of their plate, with the same attitude that I've had at every single job that I've ever had. And ultimately it, turned around into me being able to run the company full time, which is, it's a blessing and it's a lot of fun. So I'm, really, really lucky to be in this position. I'm really grateful for, the mentorship I've had from the owners as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what does your day-to-day kind of look like now as a leader?
Yeah. So I think it changes kind of. It's one of those things where when you start managing people and projects, you're not kind of managing your email. That was probably the hardest change that I've had to make, is that my email is somebody else's to-do list. And so really for me, it's planning out my week ahead of time and what are the activities I need to do? What are the meetings I need to have? And then every day, really, for me, it's all about people. That's internally, that is external. And that's really the shift that I really started to focus on when I kind of took over running all the various, points of operations and hiring. Was my emphasis was going to be on people, and then the product, and the sales were going to take care of itself because you took care of the people. So I'm a big believer in that. And that's really what internally, what we did is making sure that on a daily basis, everybody's got what they need. They're doing what they need to be doing, without telling them what to do, more of just like a casual check-in. Hey, how was your weekend? How's your day? And just making sure that they're aligned, because if they enjoy coming to work, you have a good relationship with them, you'll be surprised just how effective and efficient people can be. You'll also learn about them and really understand, are they in the right position? Or, okay, what changes can I make to get them doing the things that they love to do? Because they love to do it, they're going to do a really good job at it. And then client wise, building is all about communication. At the end of the day, we're building a live thing over, a 12-month or more period, depending on the builder and their process. And so you really have to be good at communicating with that client, because there are highs and there are lows. That's what I tell everybody at our kickoff meetings is, you're going to have very emotional days, and you're going to have that are very happy, and very emotional days that are, you're frustrated because something didn't go quite right or the way that you expected it to. And that's very normal in building, because, you're working with various people, hundreds of different trade partners and subs working in your house. And so being able to communicate with those, with your clients and let them know, hey, this is what's going on this week. Here's what we're expecting to have happen. And then if something goes wrong, really communicating with them directly. So that's a lot of what I do. And then, on top of that, it's really spending time and thought on what are ways to market, what are better ways to sell, what are the processes that we have, what are the systems that we have in place, and making sure that everything's documented from a process standpoint. It's kind of something I've taken on more recently. Just make sure I've got all the playbooks internally for us, Because if everything's kind of defined out in that playbook, it makes it a lot easier for myself and for other people to know what to do, not know how to do it, but know like what the high level, high priority activities are. And that helps you in a variety of ways. It gains clarity for those that are working for the company, but then it also helps as the business owner and as the kind of leadership team, make sure that, no matter what happens, people are going to go leave to do something greater. You have people that'll stay forever, but a lot of people are always looking to improve themselves. And that's my goal here for everyone that works, is to continue to improve, get to the point where they can either stay with us and continue to grow or go on and do bigger and better things. And so those processes also help to make sure that when you have to onboard somebody else, they can just kind of pick up the playbook where it was left off, keep iterating off of it, keep making it better. And then that way the company just continues to run pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, that people first approach is so key to success. And you were telling me on the previous conversation that we had that communication is kind of like that pillar that holds everything together. So you were mentioning systems. So what kind of systems, tools, processes do you have in place that kind of make sure you can keep a calm mind and be informed at all times?
Yeah. So, I mean, like every small business, we use Google Drive, Google Sheets, the whole Google suite. That's what our email's on. So obviously, I can't not mention that because it's all email, but we have a project management software that we use called CoConstruct right now. I'm always kind of keeping an eye out for, is there something that, might better suit us, better serve our clients. And then we just recently launched CompanyCam. And the reason I really went to them was they make it very easy to take photos of job sites, where some other applications, you got to take it on your phone, then you got to upload it. Then you can only upload a certain number at a time. And that was adding both, time and headache to the team. And that disincentivizes you to take a lot of photos because it's a pain, and your time is better allocated focusing on the job site, working with vendors, making sure that stuff's getting done correctly instead of sitting in your truck trying to upload photos. So we implemented CompanyCam as a way to have those photos they can take it right from their phone, from the app, with or without Wi-Fi. They can geotag so it goes to the right projects, and just keeps it very easy. And we've seen a big uptick in kind of the photos that we provide to clients, as well as the photos that we have on hand by using that application. So that was kind of a good win from the systems side of the world. Then of course you have your accounting system. So we use QuickBooks Online for everything that we do right now. Those are really the big systems that we've got in place that really help keep the company running and keeping it efficient and reportable. And that way I can kind of oversee a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that camera software is really cool. I was talking to a home builder out in Texas, and they have like security cams on their job sites, just kind of make sure there's no theft. I guess that's kind of a big thing out there. And then just job cleanliness and visibility at all times. So that's super cool using something like that too.
That's something really important to have when you're at home builders, to have all those photos. It's peace of mind for you. It's peace of mind for your client. It's something that you can reference later on if and when something happens, because something always happens in construction. You have photos to show what was the state before something that we found. And that's invaluable to have. And, your clients look at things in a different way that the builder looks at it. And the builder looks at it differently even than I look at it. And they look at different than my design, two designers look at it. The sales guy looks at it. And so that's really where those pictures really do help, because everybody can have a fresh perspective on it. And then we can also go in there at any time and kind of see, okay, what's the status of this project without, having to necessarily drive, to that job site specifically. So it's just super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very helpful. So how about when, let's say like a budget or scheduling just gets super chaotic, it turns into like a nightmare situation. How do you kind of de-risk that and ensure that you guys do like the on-time, on-budget delivery for your clients?
Yeah. So, really was hiring just an amazing team. So I came into a really good team, and then we've since made some new additions to that. And really, that's all them. I really can't take any credit for it. I have someone who runs procurement. I have two ladies who are fantastic at doing design and keeping that in budget and on time, making sure that they're very process driven. I say not every creative person is also process driven, and both of them they have that perfect mix. And so that really helps a lot on the selection side, and raising their hand if we look through a budget we have an internal kickoff that we do, a line plan review. We'll go through initial budgets and they'll say, okay, I don't think that's enough. And then we can evaluate, okay, where do we either pull that from, or is it something where maybe the price needs to be a little bit higher? And so that's something we're always evaluating internally. And again, team on the project management side, I have a gentleman who runs operations for me. He oversees everything in the field because he's got the building experience, not me. So that's really where he's the expert. And then a team of people that really manage those schedules. And if something ever does happen, it's one of those where there's so many people looking at it because it's in those systems and in that software that somebody can raise their hand and say, hey, I saw this, let's chat on it. And then they get the right people who need to be a part of that to go go and get to it and solve it. So if that's a scheduling conflict, having that conversation to say, okay, what can we do in the meantime while we're waiting on something? How can we adjust? Who might be able to step in sooner? And then on, the budgeting side, it's really the gentleman who's in procurement, making sure that he's keeping it updated at all time, getting bids, looking at like what's being spent and during the build, the designers looking at their allowances they've got and saying, okay, are we able to hit these? And if they're not, they raise their hand and say, hey, I really want to do this cool thing. And maybe it's one of those things where we kind of reallocate and we readjust, or they come to me and they say, hey, at the time we really thought we hit our budget number, but I'm really at the basic bare minimum of what we would consider our standard. We should consider raising this. Having a really good team in place that really takes ownership over that is super key. And I think really the recipe for success there.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like you got a pretty rock star team. That's awesome to keep things going smooth. So you come from that consultancy efficiency background. So it's great that you have all these systems in place. So what are some of the core processes that you've instilled that kind of get you from the initial lead contact, pre-construction, build process, and closeout that just keeps it all running smoothly?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not me.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, I mean, it really is the team that we have, and so they've perfected it over time. Perfection is not attainable, but they keep iterating on it, keep making it better. And so my team knows that if they have a better idea, they have a way of doing something, like let's go give it a shot. I'm never going to get frustrated if something doesn't go right because we attempted to do something. And most times, if it ever does involve a client, it's a pretty easy conversation of like, hey, this didn't really go the way we expected it to. We thought this would actually be more efficient for you. It didn't turn out that way. So we just apologize and open communication, you move on. For us, really, it's just, documenting everything as well. So, I mean, making sure that your sales guy has some type of CRM. It doesn't have to be, a big application. It can be a Google Sheet if that's what works best, but something that documents the conversations you're having, who you're having it with, where they're looking. And then that way, you know who to follow up with, because that's a big part of anything in sales is follow up. Today might not be the right time for somebody to buy, but 6 months from now might be. So making sure who those people were who were still out there on the sidelines looking and that you can follow up with. Then you get into construction. Again, CoConstruct is really that project management software. It's got all the specs, all the selections, all the plans, all the files. This is what the designers use there for allowances. Everything's plugged in there. And so that's really what keeps us on board with the process and what allows us to build with pretty good efficiency and speed for a custom builder. We're averaging about $2 million per house, and our build time averages right around 300 days. So, we're 10 months from foundation getting installed to the house being done. So that's one of the things that it can be a differentiator for you if you have that process aligned to be able to do that and build in that 10-month time frame. Because if you ask most people, and we try to ask this question early, is kind of what have you heard about building? What do you know about building? Oftentimes what they'll say is, well, I'm very scared that you're going to tell me it's a year and I'm going to get in 2 years. So time. And the other aspect is, well, you're going to give me all these budgets and then you're going to go below them and I'm going to end up owing you a ton of money. And so time and money is everybody's most two treasured, assets. However they want to spin it, it typically comes back to those two pillars. And so, what we do time-wise is very process-driven to get you in that 10 months from foundation. And then I tell people 12 months just because I'd rather be more conservative with it and then come in ahead of time. Just people feel better versus them planning on 10 months and then, they made a bunch of changes and it's actually 11 months. So I always tell people 12. And then on the budget side, we're fixed costs. So we don't do cost plus. We have done it and we will if a client is really adamant on it. Like I'm not going to not do it if someone wants it. But for me, the benefit of that fixed cost is that, I am taking all the risk on some areas, the allowances for your cabinets, your tile, your flooring, your lighting, things like that. That's really selection driven. So it's very hard to make that a fixed price up front, but everything else is fixed. So if lumber goes up like it did during COVID, that's on us. I'm really relying on my team, my procurement team, to make sure that they're truing up the numbers and they're getting the numbers accurate so we know exactly what to put in there. And, so far our variance is not very large. When we look at projects, we evaluate them at the end, kind of, how much did we go over budget or under budget? How much of that was attributable to changes? And then kind of an absolute value variance of, okay, well, how do we do compared to where we started? And typically we're only a couple percentage points one way or the other. So we average out pretty close to right on the money every time, which is, again, huge credit to the team we've got.
Yeah, that's great. You try to keep it as simple as possible, which is kind of how it needs to be with such a complicated process. And you under promise, over deliver on that timeline. 10 months is a pretty good consistent timeline to have too. From what I've been speaking to these home builders, it's not normally that quick. So then kind of I was going to say with the pre-construction process, so when it drags, that really kills the momentum with clients. So how do you kind of deal with that? What do you have in terms of processes or maybe systems so you don't get crushed by those city timelines or change orders, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, the guy that does procurement, he does all of permitting as well. So we have kind of a report that we look at on a weekly basis, and we go through where are we in permitting, how long has it been with each individual vendor that's responsible. So how long has it been with the surveyor, how long has it been with the engineer, how long has it been with the city or the county or whoever the jurisdiction is, and kind of always paying attention to that so we know our averages. Because again, it's how do you communicate to your clients when they sign a contract with how long it will take. I have a handful of house designers that we can use, or architects, and I know roughly how long each one of them takes, both in the quickest and on the longest end. And so it's that transparency and communication with the client. And then something we've played with over time is kind of, when do we structure our kickoff with a client? Because you don't want to put it so early that you kick off the house and then you have, 30, 40, 60, 70 days of inactivity. And it's not inactivity being done on their project. It's just inactivity to them. Because now you've kicked it off. They're super excited. And then they just have to wait. And that really stinks from that homeowner client experience. And so we try to put that kickoff meeting closer to when we're starting, unless we're able to front load a lot of design selections. Like somebody said, hey, I'm really busy, I'd like to front load them. Then we can try to kick off earlier and then get them in some of the design meetings that we can do before the house is built as soon as possible to give that momentum going. But we also leverage CoConstruct again to send out weekly updates to our clients. And that weekly update includes what's going on in permitting. So, we're transparently through the whole process telling you exactly where we are. Hey, your house plans, you guys are working on your house plans. Typically that's already done though by the time we go to contract, I guess, unless it's like cost plus type. But typically we're already done with plans. So it's okay, we were with the engineer. This will take you roughly 30 to 35 days to get the engineered plans back. We'll keep you updated on a weekly basis, but for the next 4 weeks, expect to hear it's with the engineer. And then we go, okay, hey, now we've got it back. Now we're, our surveyor's confirming it. And now we're going to work on another aspect of the permitting process. And so we're keeping the clients up to date with what's going on. And I think that's helped a lot because we didn't used to have that weekly cadence before the project manager took over and you started building. And so people would just feel like they were lost for a couple months. But now with weekly updates, there's no question where stuff is. And then we can give you bad news. If the county requires something new that's going to halt us for, 15 days, or it's going to take our surveyor more work, we tell the client, hey, this just happened. This is a new rule. Here's where it was implemented. We're working on it. This is going to expand the timeline a little bit. I'm sorry that it's going to be a little bit delayed. And that just helps to be that transparent. It also allows us to catch some things on the front end too, just with clients seeing site plans and saying, oh, I want to take, the site plan doesn't need to have a final driveway layout, but if they see it when you're going through the process and you share it with them, they can tell you something like, hey, I'd actually like my driveway to have a little bit of curve, have a circle, have a semicircle, whatever they want. And so it's opened up that door communication with clients early enough, which has also helped a lot in the pre-construction stage. So they feel like they have ownership and that level of excitement doesn't dip, because that's what you're really trying to prevent is the super highs and the super lows of activity, because that's when people get a little bit anxious.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great way to maintain that momentum, keeping the transparency. And it seems like you try to stay ahead of the game as much as possible too. So that's really smart. I remember you were telling me on our last call, you mentioned adding like realty and development. So you kind of internalize more of the value chain. Could you just kind of tell me more about that?
Yeah. So, I was always looking at like, what are the different business opportunities? I think that's in any business. You should say, what are some vertical integrations that aren't going to make you have multiple product lines? Because I think that's a mistake you see in some businesses is they're like, oh, I've done this. Okay, how about that? How about that? And they get so spread out. I call it like horizontal spread. That's a bad type of spread. That's where you can't kind of keep everything in line and something's going to fail, something's going to succeed. And eventually I feel like you get to like an equilibrium point in all those businesses where they don't grow anymore because they've kind of hit where they can be with the attention you're giving it. So I kind of took a look back and was trying to map out a 5-10 year plan, which I recommend everybody to do, whether it's personal plan or its business plan. And that really made me identify, okay, if I want to be growth oriented, growth minded like I am, it's very hard to get a building company to continue to grow year after year after year after year because it's a cyclical industry. Pre-sales come and go. We set internal caps on how many specs we'll have at any given time, which the banks like and we like because it's just, I know the risk we have on our money as well. And so I looked at that and I said, okay, well, what can we do that's vertically integrated? And I was like, okay, well, could we do house plans? Well, that can't really be an architecture firm. No, I don't have that capability. Nobody here does. So that's not going to work. And we looked at, okay, we had some developer approach us about partnering on some land because we could get the financing for them. So we started that. And that's really what kickstarted the development company was, okay, if we could partner with developers who maybe want other projects and they get to split it, but they don't have to carry any of the debt. We get to carry the debt for them. They'll do the work. That's a great way for us to not only have the building company get dedicated lots, because then I could buy the whole community. It's also a way to kind of have a new revenue stream. And then that kind of, from doing that, we found another tract of land that was coming that had been entitled by a developer. And so we actually bought the entitled land so I could start doing the horizontal development work. And so that's how the development company really got formed. But it was really in that 10-year vision of, okay, how can I vertically integrate to grow this company instead of just sitting here and kind of having a fluctuation, year in and year out that you see with a lot of building companies. And then Realty was kind of born as a result of the development, because we're like, well, if we're going to be self-developing and we're going to be building, we could also do the Realty side. And I had a sales guy on my team who does a great job with clients from the pre-sale side. And so I was like, well, he's already doing so much work when we have the pre-sale client coming in. So why would we not just get one of the owners to go get licensed, him go get licensed? And then that way on our own developments, we can manage everything from the marketing to the sales to the conversations. And it really just let us control that ourselves, which was appealing from both a business growth and then also just from a business strategy standpoint. Because, the Realty company, there's really no plan to go off and grow that into this like massive empire. We're not real estate agents. It's just for really the properties that we have. And we value our agent partners extremely, extremely high. So we are always trying to partner with them. If an agent brings us land, they get to list it. I don't have hey, you can't list this or you're going to pay you out. And that's worked really well for us too, because then agents are incentivized to bring us land because they know that, okay, I get the land, but then I also get this build that's going to be done, in a year and a half, 2 years. It's going to be worth way more than just the land transaction. And so then they'll stay on with us, and we value those as well. And so we're not here trying to take business away from anybody. We're just saying, if we're going to do all the work, why would we not have the agent, on site be us for just these communities that we've got?
Yeah, that's great. You were able to see the kind of 5 to 10-year vision and vertically integrate, because there's, especially in construction, there's so many parts of the processes that you can't control. So getting more control like that was a really good move. And then with that, like you were saying, you've been kind of on a growth tear. You were that, was it Fast 50 recognition, right?
Yes.
So you're increasing your price point average too. It was like 800 to 2.5. So what's kind of been like the game changer for you to kind of maintain that growth?
Yeah, I can't take all the credit for this. So the ownership group that was here before me, when they're still here, but the ownership group had kind of started that trajectory early on. They got started, they started out in that 700s, when you're starting a business, trying to figure out what you want to do. I think that was kind of that was where the opportunity really, really lied. And then that was also pre-COVID with all the booms. What was 800, what it was 1 million is now 2 million. So it kind of just naturally happened through that COVID transition, but that was really up to them for seizing the opportunity and seeing that was something that we could do, that they could do, and just taking that moment and kind of going for it. And it's worked really well. And then, when last couple of years, as I've kind of overseen kind of the operation of the company, it's really just been looking at what they did and just trying to replicate it, and then put emphasis on the areas that I felt were important to get us to that next point. Then we still meet on a monthly basis and they still have a lot of input in what we're doing. And, again, wouldn't be here without them at all. And so that's where just really taking up from them of, okay, how do we have that growth mindset at all times? Because I think that when you start to not have the growth mindset and you're like, okay, this is where I'm going to be, that's when stuff starts to fall, or, or you don't make as much because you're not looking for that, what's that next opportunity. And so we've just been very opportunistic with what we've been able to do. And that's really been the reason for the success, just always having our minds open to, what can we do in this marketplace at this time. And the biggest contributor, I think, is the lesson they taught me right when I started, which is you have to buy good land. Like in building, that's really what it comes down to. There's many different methods for a building company to operate on. We actually typically buy the land, and we have a lot inventory that people then come to us because they like what we have that we've listed, and we will put a ghost plan up, or ghost listing up with a plan that is kind of what we would build or what we actually are planning to build if nobody comes along after a certain amount of time while we're permitting typically. And then people buy the lots from us. And so lot acquisition is very critical for us. And I think that's been a big growth, is that we say no to a lot of good lots that are still really good, but I'm really looking for the great ones that I can look at and go, okay, I would live there. This works for this reason. And taking all the client experiences that we have and what they tell us they love, and that using that to evaluate every piece of property, every location, because we're not the builder that's going to go out and say, okay, I'm going to go to be the first one in this area. Typically, that's just not the way we look at it. We go, okay, I don't know that I want to be the trailblazer necessarily, but I'll look around and say, okay, there's other land of value around here. There's other builds that are in our price point. And that just makes it a little bit, more secure of an investment, in something that is otherwise inherently risky to take on debt, to buy land, to hold land, and then either build a spec on it, which is riskier than a pre-sale, or wait for that pre-sale buyer to come along to design their own plan and then build on it.
Yeah, it's like the saying, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you're going with land that you know is going to work. So then kind of continuing with that growth mindset, what would have to happen in the next 12 months that you would consider that you're a success? So what are some of the goals you have going into 2026?
Yeah. So for me, my biggest success metrics are really that the team that I'm with enjoys what they're doing, that we're all aligned on the mission to be the best builder that we can be, to be one of the best in the triangle and recognized for it. I don't need the accolades and awards. What I really care about is that, the team has a good experience, that they enjoy what they do, that our clients are having a good experience. And at the end of the day, I am a realist, and I understand that you can't make everybody perfectly happy in this world. But at the same time, I'm always trying to create a better client experience, a better team member experience. And that's where if I look 12 months down the road and I've got the same team, or close to the same team, because maybe somebody went off to do something better. And then I've got clients that are enjoying the process. They don't have to enjoy every aspect of it, because I don't think you do that in building. I think that there's always something that you wish was a little bit different, or, something is going to happen. So I tell everybody up front, building is like a marriage. One of our clients said to us recently, you have your highs and your lows, you'll have your arguments. And then at the end of the day, you come together and you're like, this has been an incredible experience. I really have enjoyed this. And the house is beautiful at the end of the day. And so that's really how I gauge a lot of that. I have my metrics, I have my goals, I have my targets from a price point, but that's definitely all comes secondary. Just because my belief is that if you focus on the team, having the right team in place with the right people, then you're going to hit those kind of almost regardless, as long as you've got some tracking mechanism that's leading you to that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that analogy too. It's definitely true that people have to come first in order for you to grow. But then let's say hypothetically you have a magic wand, right? And you can fix maybe a bottleneck or something that's slowing you down, holding you back within the business. Maybe it's to keep those retention rates up, or just make clients happy, make your people happy. What would that kind of one thing be?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I keep looking for is kind of the integration of AI into almost like design and into like a project management platform. I think there are a lot of good platforms out there. I haven't yet found one that really checks all of the boxes for what we do. It's either the client experience is not as great, or the customization is not as great, or it doesn't communicate with your accounting software very well. And so that's something, if I could, wave a magic wand and have that created, that would be, outstanding. Because, I think there's a lot of good ones, like I said, but I just haven't found the perfect one that I feel fits every need that we have, both internal and external. And then the, kind of the AI design, I'd be really interested to have the ability to kind of create something that allows you to stick your selections into this program and you can actually see 3D renderings of it. Because there's software that does it, but it's very time consuming, or it's incredibly expensive. And when you're building a house, the design team that you have, you really don't have the bandwidth to be spending hours upon hours loading this stuff up. But as we become a society that likes to see the final product, I wish that there was a way, right, to have that design be like, hey, here's the cabinets I picked with the shaker style, where the, inset style, here's the tile that I picked, here's the colors I put on the walls, and just have it be able to be created for homeowners to see. Because I think that is the hardest thing for them at the end of the day, is how does all of these selections tie together? And am I sure that I'm going to like it? When I built my own house, and that was tough for both my wife and I at times, where I was like, I'm just kind of trusting the designer here. That's something that's easy for builders to miss, because you get so used to doing it. It's like, oh, I can look at a floor plan and I know what that room's going to feel like. Your client doesn't. Or I know I can pick these paint colors and I know what it's going to look like in my head. Well, your client doesn't. How does your cabinets that you picked one week and your countertops you picked another week, and then your tile you picked another week, how does that go together? It's hard to see that kind of on a design board, as we call it, in a PowerPoint deck or a Word document, or however, your client or your builder does it. And so I wish that would be something I could, you could just kind of wave a magic wand and have figured out. I know there are people working on it. but I just haven't found one that really works well enough yet because they get close enough. But when you're working at 2 million and 3 million, you can't do close enough. You've got to have like an exact, this is what they're going to look like. Some people have visions and they want it to be exactly the vision that they've got.
Yeah, man, that would be really cool. I know there's definitely people working on that too, but just for the clients to be able to visualize that, that'd be incredible. And with the kind of internal tools you use, integrating AI, it could definitely be helpful. You can just custom build all that kind of stuff. But I'll ask you one more question. So I'd really like to know where you kind of see the home building industry going in the next 12 to 18 months. What do you like some of the biggest opportunities that you're seeing will happen, and how will you capitalize on those?
Yeah, I mean, interesting timing that with all the news that everyone's expectations is that the Fed rate's going to drop. You're seeing the 10-year Treasury go down. You're seeing mortgage rates go down. I think it's hard to be over 6 right now at the moment. I really think that magic number's 5.5 for interest rates. That's when you're really going to see a lot of people get off the sidelines. That's what I've just heard some economists and some bankers talk about. But I really think that the market right now is geared to take an uptick. You've had your production builders that have been kind of shown that they've had not great quarters. Some have had pretty good quarters, but it's interesting time. Like building, you don't really know what's going to happen. So you can make all these claims, but you have to be cautiously optimistic, as I say. But I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And then I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that's just such a different market than even Nashville or Austin, Texas, or Denver, Colorado. And real estate's so local. I mean, down here, it's almost I say it's by the street. You could have 2 streets that intersect, and one of those streets can support $3 million houses, and one of those streets cannot. And that's where it's kind of hard to predict that. But what I'm hoping to see is, with the recent news and with the perception of the public being that the rates are going to come down, that we start to see a pickup of activity. And I think we've actually seen that in the last couple of weeks. So I'm excited to see what's coming. For me, I'm curious to see what the next design trend is. I've seen Raleigh had a big modern movement, and it's still here. But I've also seen people start to go back to that more traditional colonial style that Raleigh's kind of always been known for. So that's kind of what I'm interested to see what happens in the next 12 months as to what is the style of home that's starts to take over again.
Well, thank you, Stephen. I appreciate you hopping on. We'll wrap it up here. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and share with a builder or founder in your circle. So Stephen, where should people connect with you? Website, LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. So Instagram, I have my own personals, sdunn90. That's a great place. I'm always available. Exeter Building Company is our Instagram as well for the building company, where you see all the cool videos, the cool reels, just some fun videos as well. That's just kind of entertaining to watch. And then our website's exeterbuilding.com. You can see kind of what we have in the pipeline, the kind of houses we build, some pictures and inspiration. But I'd love to connect with anybody who has questions.
Awesome. So to the audience, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Intelligent Builder.